family for a month with your $50 donation to Compassion International. Just text the word radio to 97646.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers squeezed out a 3-point win last night over Miami without 3 starters: LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Lonnie Walker. LeBron stayed home with a cold. AD is out with a stress fracture in his right foot. Walker has a sore left knee. Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook, they were healthy enough to carry the Lakers. Schroeder scored 14 of his season-high 32 points in the fourth quarter. Westbrook had 21 points and 9 assists off the bench. The Lakers are at home Friday night against Atlanta. The Clippers will try to snap a 3-game losing streak tonight in Denver. The Nuggets have the best record in the Western Conference at 24-13. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
Hi, this is Tavis.
Tavis, this is Dr. K. We've got a lot to talk about. I'll be in town on the 28th of February. Can you clear your calendar?
Absolutely, Dr. King. Good Lord, do I have some questions for you, sir. Hi, it's Tavis.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother. This is Minister Malcolm. Now, I heard that you and Martin are getting together for a public dialogue on February 28th. You see, now I already know the date. Now, I know y'all not trying to keep me out of that conversation, are you?
No, sir. No, sir.
What happened to George Floyd shouldn't happen, not even to a dog. How long must the Negro continue to endure this foolishness at the hands of law enforcement? People can take but so much before they reach a breaking point. What do you mean, Black Lives Matter? Black lives haven't mattered in this country since Negroes stopped working for free at the end of slavery. You ought to be talking about Black Guns Matter and start your own NRA. Call it the Negro Revolutionary Amalgamation.
Don't miss this compelling historic radio event, The Return. When Tavis Smiley converses with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Tuesday, February 28th, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. 1-800-920-1580. Why should the final hour of our program today be any different? We've been breaking news and sharing news every hour of today's program. We started in hour one talking about the developments in the well of the House. Kevin McCarthy went down earlier on the 7th ballot. Still cannot get it across the finish line. I said earlier, even God rested on the 7th day. Will Kevin McCarthy finally rest? I don't know. We're tracking that story. That news broke in the first hour. We also talked about Joe Biden, President Biden's announcement on immigration. He's expanding and expediting the program with regard to 4 countries in particular. One of those countries, Haiti. All 4 of them countries are populated by people of color. And so the rules just got a little more stringent, a little tighter for persons coming from these countries. Again, 4 of them, including Haiti. And so I think the president's got some tough questions to answer. But it's always the fact when we have this conversation about immigration, it's always these countries of color that are told you can't come in. If you're from Haiti, if you're from Venezuela, if you're from Honduras, 4 countries on this list. And that news broke during our program today. And now, some good news. Darvin Hamlin has awakened. Damar, I said Damar. Damar. Thank you for the correction. Damar Hamlin has awakened. You should know the name by now. The NFL player, Buffalo Bill, who had that cardiac arrest during the game the other night, has been in an induced coma for a couple of days now. Breaking news, he has awakened. We shall see in the coming days where this story goes. But as we like to say, won't he do it? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? The brother has awakened, and that is the best news I have heard. Still early in the day, so maybe there's some better news to come, but that's pretty good news. None of us would have wanted to see him not awake. But he's awake. We were told his eyes are open. And again, we will continue to follow this story all day here on KBLA Talk 1580. But some good news for a change. And I'm just smiling, as I'm sure all of you are. I don't know the brother. But you just hate to see that happen to him or anybody else. But his eyes are awakened. His eyes are open, rather. He is awake. And that's good news, Dr. Tyrone Howard. What you say about that, man?
That's excellent news, Tavis. That has made my day. I'm so happy, and you are right. Prayer is powerful, and prayer works. So we continue to lift that brother up in our prayers and hope that he makes a full, complete recovery.
We do indeed. Damar Hamlin, again, his eyes are open, and we'll, again, keep following the story here on KBLA Talk 1580. In this hour, Dr. Tyrone Howard, as you just heard, it's a new year, but the hate on teaching truth to students in American classrooms is unabated. As students return to campuses and classes resume, and as politicians sink to new lows to challenge syllabi, curricula, and pedagogy, a conversation now with the president of the American Educational Research Association and distinguished professor of education at UCLA, our friend and brother, Dr. Tyrone Howard. Now a proper introduction. How are you today, sir?
My good brother, I am well, and you just had my frat brother, Lawrence Ross, on there, so I want to wish you a happy Founders Day. So you go from one alpha to the next. Great.
I see. I can't get away from y'all, man. I can't get away from you, man. I go from one hour to the next, and I'm still talking to alpha men. You may. I don't know if you heard the top of our conversation, but I said to him, Dr. Howard, at the top of the hour, he walked in the studio, of course, and immediately said Happy Founders Day, which I appreciated. And I said to him, though, and I've said this many, many times, Kappa man though I may be, that if you take alpha men out of the American experiment in democracy, it falls flat, brother. It just falls flat when you take the alpha men out. So y'all got a grand legacy, man. I mean, you start running the names of all the alpha men, we'd be here all day, man.
Yeah, no, I'm proud, and it's an incredible legacy, and I want to be frank about it. Not just Alpha Man, but same thing with Kappa Man and Omega Man and Sigma Man and Iota. I mean, the whole Greek letter organization. When you look at the men who've come through these organizations and the impact they've had on American democracy, it is unparalleled. And so I'm just proud to consider all you gentlemen my brothers in so many ways, because we are all fighting to create justice and attain that more perfect union that we say we want to ultimately see. So,
yeah, indeed.
Again, happy Founders Day.
No, thank you. Indeed. Since you mentioned it, let me ask you right quick and we'll move forward here. So where did you pledge? And I asked him this question, where did you pledge and why did you pledge?
Great question. I pledged UC Irvine, Omicron Eta, spring 1988. And I was the first in my family to pledge. I knew nothing about pledging.
Same with me. Yeah.
this was all foreign to me, but I had a group of distinguished gentlemen on my campus who were all alphas, and I looked up to them. They handled business. They were about service. They were about giving back. They were about, integrity and scholarship, all the things that I aspired to be. And those gentlemen really set the foundation for what I wanted to be like. And then once I started doing the history search and found out all the men, the Du Boises, the Kings, all the men the Jackie Robinsons who had been members of Alpha Phi Alpha, it was a no-brainer for me at that point.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those who heard last hour, I know they're smiling because your story is the same as mine. In my case, I'm the first person on either side of my family to go to college. Knew nothing about fraternities and sororities, and I became a Kappa for the very same reason you became an Alpha, because I looked around, all these men around me on campus who were achieving just happened to be Kappas. And I wanted to be a part of whatever they were, whatever water they were drinking. I wanted to drink some of that water. Right. And so I became a Kappa for the same reason you became an Alpha at Irvine. There I was at Indiana University. But it's just fascinating to hear your story. So thank you for sharing that. When we come forward, we're going to jump into the conversation that we intended to have and will have with Dr. Tyrone Howard, and that is what we make of this moment that we are in a new year. The calendar has changed, but the struggle continues. And these politicians are sinking to all kinds of new lows, again, challenging syllabi and curricula and pedagogy. What do we do about that in this year and beyond, particularly as we move ever closer to another presidential election cycle where this is going to be this attack on CRT and beyond, one of those issues that they're going to ride and ride and ride. We'll get started in our conversation with Dr. Howard when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Central Neighborhood Health Foundation is a full-service network of federally qualified health care centers that serves local communities throughout Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. CNHF clinics provide low-cost to no-cost, compassionate, comprehensive, quality health care, which includes primary care services for chronic disease and diabetes management, pediatric and women's services, preventive care, vision and dental screenings, COVID-19 testing and vaccines, flu vaccines, behavioral health, HIV, and substance use services. Virtual telehealth visits are available from the comfort of your home with highly qualified physicians and medical professionals. CNHF also provides peer support specialist training and help with housing navigation. Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. Your wellness is our priority. Comprehensive care built on trust and respect. For more information, visit cnhfclinics.org or call 213-536-5815 today to locate a clinic near you.
Stock up and save big now, store-wide at the Lowe's Truckload event. For a limited time, save up to 50% on select tools and accessories from the brands you trust. And buy a DeWalt 12-inch dual bevel miter saw and get an adjustable stand for free. Plus, get deals on appliances, bath, and more. Head to your local Lowe's or visit Lowe's.com to shop the Truckload event today. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Valid 12/29 through 1/11.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Spilled your milkshake? Quick, the quicker picker upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back to your milkshake.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and they're like, it's better than yours.
Bounty, the quicker picker upper.
Less BS per broadcast. Fewer microaggressions per megawatt. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. He's Dr. Tyrone Howard. Just getting started in our conversation in this hour. 2 things I want to bring to your attention right quick. I mentioned moments ago, and I was talking about all the breaking news today. The brother Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills has opened his eyes. So after this moment that could very well have turned tragic that we saw in this football game the other night, the NFL, the game between the Bengals and the Bills, he has opened his eyes. Now he's awake, and as we said earlier, won't he do it? Won't he do it? And so that's something there to celebrate. Number one. Number two, round 8 has just started in the well of the House back in Washington. They are now tabulating votes in round 8 to figure out whether or not and who, in fact, will be Speaker of the House. There are 3 folks on the ballot. Kevin McCarthy, of course, trying for the 8th time to pull this off. Hakeem Jeffries, that is, my Kappa brother. Hakeem Jeffries is on the ballot, of course, for the Democrats. and Byron Donald, black man who went to FAMU, but he's a black Republican, went to FAMU. Black Republican is on the ballot. He's picking up, 5, 10, 12 votes here and there. So there are 3 people on the ballot at the moment, as I understand it. But we will see at the end of round 8, and perhaps we'll know what that looks like before this hour ends. And I'll update you on that. But voting has just started in round 8 of this drama on the Hill. And finally, I was talking about President Biden and this new immigration policy announced today that we're going to be interrogating in the days ahead. I need to spend some more time delving into it. But I mentioned 4 countries that the president is, the 2 words of the day are expand and expedite. He's expanding the program and expediting the detention or rerouting of persons from these 4 countries. I mentioned 3 of them. I didn't mention the 4th. And people called to ask me what the 4th country was. Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti that I mentioned earlier. So Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti are the 4 countries that the president is tightening the noose, as it were. We all remember that footage of those Border Patrol agents on horseback whipping those Haitians. Just unbelievable and horrific images. But those are the countries that the president has decided he's gonna play hardball with, and if you get caught trying to come in beyond a certain number, they're sending you to Mexico, which is strange. Not sending you back to Haiti, but to Mexico. So there's some real problems I have just at first glance with what the president said today. I need to delve into it a little bit more and make myself more intelligent on the subject matter. But trust me, by Monday morning, since tomorrow is Friday, tomorrow you get the best of Tavis, Smiley. But trust and believe, by Monday morning I'll be ready to go on that thing. And we're gonna work this thing out Monday morning and talk about what the president has done and whether or not he's lost his mind. I don't know. We shall see when I get a chance to study it a bit more. But I can promise you, we'll be talking about that issue, Lord willing, come Monday morning. In this hour, honored to be joined by a distinguished professor of education at UCLA, Dr. Tyrone Howard. I mentioned earlier, it's a new year, but the pushback, the fight, the hate on teaching the truth, and for that matter, the hate in this country against corrective programs like affirmative action that allows for people of color to be on college campuses like UCLA. This country, in so many ways, Dr. Howard, to my mind, is going in the wrong direction. We will narrow this conversation as we move through the hour, but what do you make of just the moment that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, Tavis, I think the moment is always one that's evolving based on the current events that we see taking place. So a moment ago, you just talked about President Biden's legislation around these 4 countries, Haiti, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, where there's going to be some stricter types of pieces of legislation around coming to this country. And it really ties into this larger educational CRT conversation, because I think what you see happening in this country at this moment is we're seeing unprecedented demographic changes like we've never seen in this country. We've always prided ourselves as a country of immigrants, but what we've oftentimes neglected is that, not all folks voluntarily came here. Black folks were brought here, we know, against their will. And you had our indigenous brothers and sisters who were invaded upon. But what we see happening is that the influx of immigration looks unlike what we've ever seen before. 100 years ago, you saw mostly folks coming from European countries who were coming to this country. Now we see an influx of folks who are black and brown largely coming to this country. And this country does not know how to deal with that because America is no longer going to look the way it looked in years past. There's a phenomenal book by a demographer by the name of William Fry called Diversity Explosion. And what he talks about in that book is that we are seeing some changes, not just on the fringes of this country, i.e. California, New York, Florida, Texas, but we're seeing rapid transformation in middle America, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Nevada, where they're seeing black and brown folks in ways that they've never seen it before. And I think that scares the living daylights out of a lot of folks because they're saying, what is happening to this country? And what we don't want to talk about is this country is becoming more and more non-white with each passing day.
Yep. You know, and I know, and Fry talks about it in this book, as do a couple of other authors and other texts that I've had featured on this program. They talk about the fact that we're just some years away, of course, from America for the first time ever being a nation where people of color outnumber the majority. We've never had that scenario since the founding of this republic. A couple of questions here. Let me start with this. What do you make of the fact that we are hurtling, whether we like it or not, whether they like it or not, we are hurtling toward that reality? I suspect that you and I may still be around when that happens. It's just some years off in the future. But what are your thoughts? And maybe we'll still be on the radio together at that time. So we're gonna podcast this program after we come off the live radio, as we always do. So we'll pull the tape, as we say. We'll pull the tape somewhere down the road to see how right you were. But on this side of this country becoming a nation for the first time ever, majority minority as some call it, what do you make of what we are hurtling toward, and what do you think is going to happen when we get there?
Yeah, so it's the ultimate paradox. So me personally, I'm elated. I am overjoyed. I am just beyond excited about the possibilities of having the United States of America that looks radically different than it did for my grandmothers and my grandfathers and their grandmothers and their grandfathers. I think diversity is our strength. I think diversity is something we should celebrate. I think it's something we should embrace. So that's the one side of me that is really, really excited about what we can become. Mm-hmm. But I do have some trepidation about how some of our other countrymen will feel about what that looks like, because power is never given away. It has to be taken. And I think there's a significant power struggle that you will see happening, and it's happening currently in this country, to ensure that the folks who will become the majority do not have the majority of power when it comes to legislation, do not have power when it comes to issues around, say, economic power, does not have the kind of majority when it comes to the ability to determine how, commerce moves in this country, and just the global impact that this country will have. So I think there's a big looming fight that lies ahead. And I think what we see with critical race theory, for example, is just one small example of what I think a larger battle will look like, because folks will see their numbers dwindling. And like I said a moment ago, that really causes a lot of fear for folks in this country.
We'll come back to CRT and the pushback against it and teaching the truth more broadly in classrooms across the country. But since you went there, let me follow you. And this is your lane, so I'm going to stand down and let you take it as far as you want to take it. So those demographic changes that we were just discussing that are in the offing, broadly speaking, or again, for that matter, be as specific as you want, what do you think those demographic changes portend for education as we know it, or as we do it?
Sure. So we've studied this for a while, and what we've seen is that the trends we see in education are usually a foreshadow for what the rest of the country will look like in subsequent decades. Mm-hmm. And we have seen in education, we're about 8 years away from seeing a country where the majority of students in K-12 public schools will be non-white. Mm-hmm. And that trend is not going to reverse itself. By all accounts, the data tells us we'll see more black, and brown, and indigenous, and Asian American, and Asian Pacific Islander students in our schools. What that means is that we will have to look at the quality of education, because unfortunately, lots of the public schools that those black and brown children attend don't prepare them well for the demands of a changing society, technological society, and the economies, the new economies that we're seeing today. So this country will have to come to a reckoning point to say, if we want to continue to be sort of the world power that we claim to be, we cannot allow that to happen when the largest segments of our population are being undereducated. It has implications for us economically. It has implications for us politically. It has security sort of implications tied to it. We're going to have to face the moment where we say, if we're going to be the country that we want to be, we're going to have to do right by our black and brown children, who will ultimately become the leaders of this nation.
As you well know, nothing new here. It's been this way for quite some time, frankly, since forever. And again, this is your lane, education. I remember having this conversation many years ago with Jawanza Kunjufu about the reality, a brilliant educator out of Chicago, as you know, conversation about the fact that most black boys in American schools are taught by white women. That's just the reality. I was one of those black boys that was taught by white women, and that doesn't mean that white women can't step up. One of my favorite teachers was Mrs. Vera Graft, and I remember her fondly to this day. She's white, I'm black, and she would not let me quit on myself, and made me the kind of student, the better student that I became. So because you're white doesn't mean you can't step up. But the reality is that most black boys in schools are taught by white women. As you made the point a moment ago about what these changing demographics mean for the way we do education, and what we're going to have to confront in the years to come, it occurs to me that all those colored students that you were talking about, who will make up the majority of American students in classrooms in 8 years, are taught by white teachers. How am I to read that?
Yeah, I think you're raising a really important issue here, and I think you're to read that with a real sort of point of concern, because what we know is that approximately 80% of all classroom teachers are white. And here's the thing, Tavis, we know that that number is increasing. Some estimates, the American Association for Colleges of Teacher Education, they project that number to go as high as 90% in the next decade. So we're seeing an increasingly diverse student population that will be interacting with an increasingly homogeneous teaching population. So now what does this all mean? What it means is that you will have, let me be clear about this, well-intended white women who will be teaching students who are racially different, culturally different, linguistically different from them. Now, folks always say, well, Tyrone, are you saying that white folks can't teach black children? No, I'm not, because I, like you, also had white teachers in Compton, California who believed in me, who taught me well. But I got to bring it home and say that we also must recognize that not all white teachers see the best in what black children bring to the classroom. So you have oftentimes well-intended teachers who do significant damage to black children. You have teachers who will say, I believe in children, I love children, I think children can learn, but yet will have the lowest of expectations, don't challenge black students, don't believe in their potential and promise, and here's the kicker, who are just culturally disconnected to the realities of how we talk, how we think, how we express ourselves, how we emote, how we celebrate joy, how we communicate with our families. All these aspects of who we are as black folk, there are white folks who just don't get that, who just don't understand it. And far too many think that because it's different from them means it must be deficient or means it must be dysfunctional. So they misread the entire situation, and then you wonder why so many black boys end up in special education, why so many black boys end up suspended and expelled from schools, because it's oftentimes a misread from well-intended folks who do significant long-term damage to black and brown children.
When we come forward after news, traffic, and sports, I want to come right back to this point as quickly as we can about expectations, specifically low expectations. When you were last on this program, I think I mentioned to you that the one thing, it wasn't but one or two, but one of the two things that George W. Bush, baby Bush, did or said as president that I agreed with was this line he used that I'll will forever remember. Speaking of black kids in classrooms, he called it the soft bigotry of low expectations. That's what black boys too often are confronted with. This is George W. Bush saying this. What a great line. The soft bigotry of low expectations. You hear Dr. Howard now talking about the fact that as we see more kids of color populating classrooms, the numbers are going the other direction for teachers. We're at 80% now, going to jump to 90% of white teachers as these classrooms become full more and more of students of color. So these numbers are going in different directions, right? And I'm wondering, and I want to ask him directly and forthrightly, what it means. What's the end result when white teachers in the classroom have low expectations of students of color? What happens in that regard? That question and more for Dr. Tyrone Howard when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We don't try to be all things to all people. We just remain true to who we are. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Top black elected officials in New York State and the city are meeting to talk public safety. Reverend Al Sharpton is hosting the summit this month, which also includes Mayor Adams and Attorney General Letitia James. Sharp said he's holding the summit as black leaders hold more elected offices than ever before. Prosecutors in Fulton County, Georgia say the trial of Atlanta rapper Young Thug, the suspected leader of a criminal street gang, could last 6 to 12 months as jury selection gets underway. More than a dozen defendants are being tried of crimes connected to their ties to the gang Young Slime Life. The state also plans to call 372 witnesses. On this day in history, civil rights leader Hosea Williams was born in 1926. He was an integral part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s inner circle. And that is the latest. I'm Doug Davis from the Black Information Network at BINnews.com.
A SIGLERT is still on for the Golden State Freeway in Sun Valley. The 2 right lanes are flooded. 5 northbound past Lankershim Boulevard. Traffic stop and go from Tuxford Street. Heading the other way in Santa Clarita. 5 southbound before Lyons Avenue. The 2 right lanes closed for pothole repair. Traffic stop from Magic Mountain Parkway. And checking Chatsworth 118 westbound before Rocky Peak Road. There's a crash in the carpool lane into left lanes.
We've all felt the impact of rising food prices. For families in poverty, they're facing malnutrition and even death. You can feed a family for a month with your $50 donation to Compassion International. Just text the word radio to 97646.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers squeezed out a 3-point win last night over Miami without 3 starters: LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Lonnie Walker. LeBron stayed home with a cold. AD is out with a stress fracture in his right foot. Walker has a sore left knee. Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook, they were healthy enough to carry the Lakers. Schroeder scored 14 of his season-high 32 points in the fourth quarter. Westbrook had 21 points and 9 assists off the bench. The Lakers are at home Friday night against Atlanta. The Clippers will try to snap a 3-game losing streak tonight in Denver. The Nuggets have the best record in the Western Conference at 24-13. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
On Sunday, January 15th at 4 p.m., SCLC Southern California presents Moving into the Promise of the Beloved Community at the 52nd Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy Celebration. President William D. Smart invites you to attend the celebration on Dr. King's birthday, Sunday, January 15th, 4 p.m. at the Sheraton LAX, 6101 West Century Boulevard. This year's event will honor community members who have made a significant impact in 2022, including our own Tavis Smiley, who will also deliver the keynote address. For tickets, call 213-268-3082 or email pastorsmart@sclc-sc.org. That's 213-268-3082 or email pastorsmart@sclc-sc.org. Don't miss SCLC Southern California's 52nd Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy Celebration, Sunday, January 15th, 4 p.m. at the Sheraton LAX.
KBLA Talk 1580 would like to thank all the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to a lunch for 10, brought to you by K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you are just like our staff, putting in many smart, hard-working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA 1580 to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. Sponsored by K. Michelle's Kitchen Catering.com. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action. This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
I feel like I'm doing double duty today. I'm doing my regular gig as a host of this program on KBLA Talk 1580, but I'm also feeling more like Lester Holt, Max Robinson, Bernard Shaw, Carol Simpson, take your pick of these brilliant black anchors at the national level down through the years. More breaking news here. He lost again. It appears that Kevin McCarthy is going down in flames again in round 8. We can track this by the number of, there's only a 4-vote margin between Republicans and Democrats. There are 20 Republicans who are holding up this show that Kevin McCarthy wants to get on the road. So every time one of them votes, you just count the numbers. You can tell before they even all cast their votes that he ain't going to make it. So CNN just reporting he's going to lose round 8 as well. So 7 times was not the charm, and neither is 8. We will see again what happens, but it appears that Kevin McCarthy is going to lose again on round 8 of voting to decide the new Speaker of the House. Also, some more breaking news about Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills. This is a cute story here. This is being reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter. As you know, you sports fans, Adam Schefter always breaking NFL news. According to Adam Schefter of ESPN, Doctors said that Damar Hamlin, after he awakened, he cannot talk, but after his eyes opened, he was able to write on a whiteboard, and this is what he wrote when he woke up. Who won the game? He woke up, they handed him a whiteboard because he can't talk, and he wrote on the board, who won the game? And here's the best part of the story. The doctors responded, you won. You won the game of life. You won. You won the game of life. Great story there, reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter. So things for Damar Hamlin, Dr. Howard, are going in the right direction, and for Kevin McCarthy, sir, they're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, this has been just incredible to watch, this McCarthy situation, Tavis. I don't know how many more rounds I would be able to endure if I'm McCarthy, but I digress.
Yeah, but it says we'll get back to that subject here in a second, but it says, I think, a lot about Kevin McCarthy. There are two ways to read it. One, you can read it as dogged determination. Speaking of D words, the other way to read it is despicable desperation. I don't know which one I'm going with.
Yeah, it's surreal to watch, and so it's been like theater for me. I'm watching every count. I'm like, how long is this gonna go on? We may be watching this for the next week or so.
Yeah, well, I as I've said earlier, more than once in this program, because I've been covering this again. I feel like Bernard Shaw, Max Robinson, and Lester Holt reporting news as I'm trying to host the show. I've said a number of times today that I am waiting to see whether or not these Republicans hate Kevin McCarthy enough for some path to be cleared for the brother Hakeem Jeffries to become the speaker. Hakeem is just that kind of guy. I know Hakeem. He's a Kappa brother. He's good enough and shrewd enough, perhaps, to cut a deal with some Republicans. You only need a handful of votes, like 4 to 6. That's all he needs of them to cross over to make him. He is already the first African American in history to run. To manage either party in either house as leader. Nancy Pelosi steps down, Hakeem Jeffries steps up. So it's possible, potentially, he could get 4 to 6 people to cross the aisle, hold all the Democrats, and he becomes the speaker faster than we thought he was going to become speaker. But I can't imagine. Yeah, it would be something. I just can't imagine that these Republicans hate Kevin McCarthy that much to let this Negro, it end up being the speaker on their watch. I can't see that. But something.
You know what? Stranger things have happened.
They have. They have.
We need to see and see how it all unfolds.
No, we shall see. But to Dr. Tyrone Howard's point, distinguished professor of education in the School of Education and Information Sciences at UCLA, best-selling author, brilliant all-around brother, and president of the American Educational Research Association. He's right about the fact that stranger things have happened. So we shall see. But Kevin McCarthy goes down again in round 8, and Damar Hamlin is awake and writing questions like who won the game. And I love, again, that story. His doctor said to him, you won the game. You have won the game of life. As I said earlier, won't he do it? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Back to Dr. Tyrone Howard. Won't he do it? Yeah, he'll do it. If you ask him the right question, he'll give you the right answer. And the question that I posed was, if George W. Bush is right, and I think he was right about this, that too often what our children are encountered, what they face in American classrooms is the soft bigotry of low expectations. If George Bush was right about that, then what happens? You study this stuff. This is what you do. What happens when black and brown kids are subjected to teachers who have low expectations of them? What's the end game there?
Yeah, so I'm like you, Tavis. There's very few things I agree with George W. Bush about, but the soft bigotry of low expectations is one of them. And I think he is spot on with that concept because it's all too prevalent in schools. And so what that means at the end of the day is this. There's a tacit acceptance of failure. There's this sense that there is no need for rigor or depth or complexity in instruction. There's this understanding that I don't need to encourage you to do better, to push through difficult problem solving in the classroom. There's this reality that says that I don't need to encourage you to think about college or career because you ain't going. And there's this persistent set of microaggressions and what I call academic apathy that just says that you just sit over there and don't bother me, and I'll say I love you and care about you, but I'm not challenging you, I'm not pushing you, I'm not encouraging you to think anything beyond your current environment. And that's what's hurting our black children more than anything else. Folks oftentimes say, you got racist teachers out there. Yes, you do, and they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. But what you don't see is this blatant, in-your-face, explicit name-calling. It's the soft bigotry of low expectations that you mentioned. That's what harms our kids more than anything else. I'm just not going to believe in you. I'm not going to challenge you. I'm not going to push you to be better. And I've seen this happen in too many classrooms across this city, across this state, across this country, where we just give up on kids, or we never believe in them in the first place because of their zip code, because of their skin color, or because of their family composition. And to me, that's outright criminal. And oh, by the way, I mentioned the word criminal because what is the outcome? We see this strong, like the Tavis, you looked at this school-to-prison pipeline full of black men who basically have been given up on at earlier and earlier ages. We don't encourage them to read, to do math, to think about science. And we know where that ends up because these are the same young people who then don't graduate from high school. They don't graduate from high school. The set of options are limited, and self-sufficiency is a natural basic instinct. And when folks don't have options, they ultimately turn to wayward kinds of pathways. And so this has some consequences that are life and death at the end of the day.
Speaking of consequences, let me see if we can't arrest this development. I don't know the answer, but you might, because again, this is what you do. If the data is irrefutable, and it is, if it's incontrovertible, and it is, which suggests, as you detailed for us earlier, that in just about 8 years, the majority of students in American classrooms will be students of color. And at the same time, we're going to jump from the 80th percentile to the 90th percentile of white teachers teaching those colored students. That data is real. So what's to be done? I mean, that's what we're about to face. So what's to be done in that regard?
Yeah, so I always have this conversation with colleagues and friends who say, well, we got to do something to get more folk of color into the classroom. And I agree with that. And that's a different conversation. But the reality is this. We're not going to get a massive wave of black and brown folks into classrooms next week, next year, next decade. It just ain't going to happen. So that means we have to have a real long, hard conversation about how we help to begin to equip white teachers with the kind of knowledge and resources, cultural competency and skills to be able to teach and talk across racial and ethnic differences. Now, I'm one who believes that it's possible. It ain't always easy, but it's possible. You have to begin to help, some of our white brothers and sisters understand what white privilege is and to understand white fragility, that when we talk about this past, how black and brown folks have been treated, that don't mean that you start feeling guilty or you start crying. It means that you have the role and responsibility to do something about it, right? When you choose to work in certain schools, don't feel sorry for kids. Don't lower their expectations. Hold them high to certain standards and begin to equip yourself with connecting with families and knowing that all families are going to look different. Some kids are being raised by grandmothers and aunts and uncles. And so you have to immerse yourself in communities, begin to adopt a greater degree of cultural humility where you understand that not everybody was raised the way that you were raised. And you got to be willing to learn. Spend some time in a black church. Go to a black barbershop. Go to a black beauty shop. Go to a black restaurant. Immerse yourself in that community and that culture. Listen and learn and observe from how folks get at. And when you do that, you begin to develop greater cultural competency, which gives you the ability to connect to the people that you are teaching.
Let me complicate this even further for Dr. Howard, because I know he can handle it. So we're talking about teachers, we're talking about students. Teachers are white, students of color. And Randy Weingarten, who's been on this program a number of times. I've known Randy for years. Randy is catching some heat right about now because she recently said that this teacher shortage, by the way, you didn't know that, did you? There's a teacher shortage. So again, I want to complicate this more for Dr. Howard. There's a teacher shortage right now, and Randy Weingarten is catching some hell right now for saying that the teacher shortage is primarily born of culture wars. She says that is the reason for this teacher shortage, culture wars, and the right is going after her for that comment. When we come forward, I'll get Dr. Tyrone Howard's take on what Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, had to say, and the pushback she's getting for having said it, and a great deal more when we come forward with Dr. Tyrone Howard of UCLA on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Hey y'all, this is your girl Cheryl Underwood, and I want to tell you something. My digestive system used to make me feel sluggish, but those days are over. Now I feel great. That's because I increased my fiber intake with the Metamucil 2-week challenge, and I'm still hooked. I just took Metamucil every day for 14 days, and it's really that easy. Metamucil traps and removes the waste that weighs you down, so you feel lighter and more energetic. Now I never want to go back to that heavy feeling. Are you ready for the Metamucil 2-week challenge? For a coupon and daily support, sign up at Metamucil.com today.
Did you know Nissan EVs have traveled 8 billion miles? Just a quick trip to Pluto and back. And what did we learn along the way? Well, that an EV can take on the world, like the Nissan Leaf. It can move racing forward and take your breath away, like the all-new Nissan Ariya. We learned to make EVs that electrify. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. Ariya not yet available for purchase. Expected availability late fall, subject to change.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows the Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, Dr. Howard, Tyrone Howard of UCLA. So Randy Weingarten is in some trouble for blaming this teacher shortage on culture wars. And you know what she was getting at, and the right went in. Your take?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think Randy sort of open Pandora's box. I do think the culture wars are a part of this current teacher shortage, Tavis, but I think that the pandemic also played a role in the teacher shortage. But I think the bigger issue, which I think, Randy and other folks can't really talk about, is that there's a real hard question we don't want to address in this country, is that for years, we didn't have a teacher shortage. We had a teacher distribution problem where folks did not want to teach in black and brown communities. So therefore, it comes down to, what do we think about black and brown children? Certain folks say, I would rather not work, though I've got a teaching credential, though I've got the kind of proper kind of, experience I need, but I don't want to teach in that community. I don't want to teach those kids. I don't want to go to that zip code. And so I think it speaks to this larger fabric of sort of how we begin to talk about institutional racism. And institutional racism has always taught us in this country that black folks don't matter, and that the education of black folks is not important. And that's why we have always been able to galvanize in our own communities, in our own churches, in our own schools, to lift up each other when we knew that the American sanctioned schools would not do that. So I think the remnants of that are still with us. And so I think the teacher shortage is still one where we're seeing a larger number of schools across the country that are comprised of black and brown students. And you've got teachers who earn these credentials who say, I just don't want to be in that school, in that community. I'd rather teach in the predominantly white suburban community where I grew up in. But folks aren't giving up those jobs in a way that they are in more urban and rural communities.
Dr. Tyrone Howard is a distinguished professor in education at UCLA and president of the American Educational Research Association, hence putting these difficult questions to him. And speaking of a tough question, here's one that I was wrestling with last night preparing for our conversation. And I want to talk to you specifically about, these the politics, really. Politicians, but the politics of these challenges to syllabi and curricula and pedagogy. And I was reading a number of pieces last night, again, prepping for our talk today, and I'm not sure that I came away with a clear frame for where I think we're headed. So let me tell you what I was reading last night, and when we come forward in our remaining moments, I'll get your take, and you can make sense of this for me because it's kind of all over the map. So I'm reading all these kinds of stories last night about various politicians, principal among them, Ron DeSantis in Florida, and all the drama that he is, pushing to stop woke, to push back against CRT, teaching the truth, diversity courses. That's Ron DeSantis in Florida. There are other governors and others doing the same thing around the country, on the one hand. On the other hand, I was reading data last night that suggested that in the midterm elections, that cracking down on CRT in public schools did not necessarily bring Republicans many new voters. And then I'm reading another piece about the fact that while that may be true, Republicans are gearing up to push even harder to get more conservatives on school boards across the country. So three different pieces I was reading last night that really took my mind in three different directions, and maybe you can make sense of all that and weave that together for me when we come forward in our remaining moments with Dr. Tyrone Howard on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Drop it!
When you tune in to KBLA Talk 1580, we want you to know what you're downloading.
Now you listen to me, and you listen to me closely.
In a recent African-American media issue survey conducted by the public opinion research and public policy consulting firm Eviteris, KBLA Talk 1580 was found to be the most trusted, credible, and reliable source on the airways for Black Los Angeles and beyond. Check it out. We take our role seriously as your trusted messenger. At KBLA Talk 1580, it's about truth, not ratings. And when you hear us say, when we come forward, we mean it. We mean it.
That's the bottom line.
We're not going back. Not to the back of the bus, not to back alleys, not back in the closet, and definitely not back to the good old days.
Might as well forget it. No way.
We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, reminding you, when we fight, we win. Central CSO organizes for the rights of the undocumented, quality public education, and supporting in solidarity other communities seeking social justice. Central CSO stands for Chicano X, self-determination, defending public education, and fighting for all oppressed people in Boyle Heights and East Los Angeles. Find Central CSO meetings every third Wednesday. Visit online at centralcso.wordpress.com or on Instagram at CentralCS. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
It's the 31st Annual Empowerment Congress Leadership Summit, and you're invited. In this moment of civic crisis, come join LA Mayor Karen Bass, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, LA City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto, our own Tavis Smiley, and more for a powerful day of civic engagement with robust discussions around charter reform, homelessness, financial empowerment, new models of inclusion leadership for multiracial empowerment, and more. Here's your personal invitation from KBLA Talk 1580 to join us Saturday, January 14th, 9 a.m. to 12 noon at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science during the National Observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend. For more details, go to info@empowermentcongress.org. Again, it's the 31st Annual Empowerment Congress Leadership Summit, Saturday, January 14th at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. For all the details, go to info@empowermentcongress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm not sure, Dr. Tyrone Howard, I have a clear frame when I read that these politicians increasingly, Ron DeSantis and others, are demonizing DEI and the teaching of truth in classrooms. I'm also reading poll numbers indicating that in the midterm elections, at least, CRT was not the, how might I put it, pot of voter gold that Republicans thought it might be. But at the same time, they are increasingly becoming more aggressive in their efforts to put more conservatives on school boards. Three disparate pieces. Can you link it up together for me?
Yeah, so it's a complicated picture, right? Because we know that there are 42 states that either introduced or passed legislation that is anti-CRT. And so I think you're right, Tavis, that these are there folks out there trying to demonize DEI, diversity, because it really gets to the heart of having a real, honest conversation about the history of this country. And there are those who don't want us to recognize the horrific institution that is slavery, don't want to recognize the horrific institution that was Jim Crow, and the remnants of this in this current moment. I mean, you've been dealing beautifully with the whole Bruce Beach situation. That is just one example of the kinds of stories that we still don't want to address in this country. So the fact that this particular sort of CRT issue, which the right rolled out, it was full of misinformation and lies, didn't sort of garner the kind of sort of voter inertia that they thought it would garner, I think speaks to the issue we started off this conversation with. The demographics are shifting. So the suburban white moms that were oftentimes targeted, those numbers aren't growing across the country. Those numbers are either remaining stagnant or they are declining. So what you're seeing is, again, a more diverse body politic of folks who are going to the polls who don't buy into this line that suggests that CRT is designed to make white children feel bad, which it's not, or CRT is meant to be divisive, which it is not. Critical race theory only seeks to look at the role that race and racism has played in educational opportunities in this country, historically and contemporarily. So I think when it's all said and done, we have to begin to think about what's the counterpoint to this sort of misinformation, because I do think the right will double down on this issue when it comes to the 2024 election. I think they will go to further ends of the earth to show that this thing is the worst thing since the boogeyman, right? And conjure up all kinds of narratives to say that kids are getting exposed to something that they shouldn't. We've got to make sure that we get folks on school boards and show up at school board meetings to begin to say, look, we want our children to learn the full story of America, not just those parts of America that makes the country look great and nice and prosperous, of which there are parts, but there are also these ugly underbellies to which we are still dealing with the consequences to this day that need to be a part of the American narrative. And anybody who's truly concerned about their children being educated, who wants a critical education, how do you not want your children to understand the full story that is this United States of America? And I think that's the big sort of point that we're sort of up against. There's a part of this country that wants to sort of look at this only through rose-colored lenses. And there are those of us who are saying we need to take those glasses off, because there's an ugly side of the story that needs to be told, because it still explains today's circumstances.
To your point about school boards, and I'm out of time here, but everybody's focused on the presidential race in 2024. And my eye is on these school board races. You probably saw the story. I live in South Carolina, where a school board in the midterms, a new school board got elected, a school board of all white people, and literally in the first hour of their very first meeting, they changed the curricula in the whole school system. They fired the recently hired black superintendent, and they did some other stuff, all literally in the first hour of their very first meeting. So these school boards have all kind of power to disrupt the system from teaching the truth, prohibit the system from teaching the truth. And so I'm keeping my eyes not just on the presidential race, but on these school board races across the country. Dr. Tyrone Howard, Distinguished Professor of Education at UCLA, National President of the American Educational Research Association. I always, Dr. Howard, enjoy talking to you. I always learn so much from you. You empower me with information. And I thank you for your time, and we'll do it again, my friend.
Thank you, Tavis. Appreciate you, brother.
Good to have you on. Back tomorrow morning, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Well, tomorrow's the best of Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk, 1580. Until then, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. There's still no Speaker of the House following a 7th vote today. Kevin McCarthy once again failed to get enough votes to secure the gavel. Conservative Republicans have banded together since Tuesday to keep him from gaining the necessary votes. New York's Black Attorney General Letitia James